Yo, what's poppin'? What's good? Welcome to another episode of Ramble Young Man Ramble. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about what's going on this week, news, music, whatever. We might not. I'm just gonna ramble. So, let's get into it. Let's get directly into it. First of all, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I appreciate the comments. Appreciate the love, the tips. I'm figuring this out as I go, and I don't want to be too perfect at the beginning because I don't say too perfect, but I don't want to do too much studying at the beginning because it will keep me from doing it and not, getting this out. But yeah, bro, I'm excited I get to do this. I've been wanting to do this for a minute, so yeah. Let's get to it. Man, what has been happening this week? These last 2 weeks, right? We got Haitian people at the border. We have missing white girl syndrome. We have the George Floyd Act not going. So let me see. What do I want to talk about? Let's talk about let's talk about Haiti for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Why not? Let's get into it. First of all, we are extremely ill prepared for international interaction, international dealings with people as just a common person in this country. Just that's because our education system is very flawed. The fact that I didn't know much about Haiti, period, and they're just right over there across the water, right in the middle of the Gulf, and share an island with the Dominican Republic, on the island of Hispania. I think that's what it used to be called. I don't know. I watched the documentary about DR and baseball. But, I think Haiti was one of the first, if not the first country in the Western Hemisphere that was freed and no longer a territory, which in turn freed the slaves in that country. I'm keeping everything in, so, you know what I'm saying, the little burps, no snots and snivels, so get over it. And, 1804, 1802, right? They fought for their freedom. What I didn't know was, I heard of, I wasn't sure. So after they straight up fought for their freedom, got their freedom, France was like, oh, y'all not a real country, because they were a French colony. First Spanish and then French, and mixing up with them, and America had their money in the pot there too, because of the slave trade and sugar and cotton, you know what I mean? And France, they blockaded the country and threatened them. So you guys can be a country, but y'all owe us millions of dollars. And this is in the 1800s. So that's like billions of dollars today. So the president at the time, whoever ran Haiti at the time, was like, it seems like either we all get just bombarded with bombs or whatever, or we do this. So he signed it or whatever, and then they agreed to see them as a country. The crazy part is they could have had their sovereignty, acknowledged, but America ties with France at that point, it's right before the War of 1812, right after the Revolutionary War, so they were tight with France. um, and to do so, to pay back France, other than um, going ham on their agriculture, they racked up debt and took out loans and extremely high interest loans from these countries and these banks, these world banks. So I think they didn't pay off that debt until, I want to say, the mid 1900s. I want to say 1950, 1960, 1970. That's when they finished paying off that debt. So when you go that long, and in that space was the height of your income timing. You know what I mean? Like, America would not be America without cotton and sugar. You know, it wouldn't. America would not be the power it is without cotton. Because without cotton, we didn't have any liquid funds to go out, and people can venture out and to the West and things of that nature and find other resources to, cotton was at cotton and tobacco were at the core of those, those things. And they had sugar cane, cotton, most likely tobacco, and they couldn't really get in when when everything was hot and everybody wanted these things, because people around the world couldn't grow these things. And so by the time they got out from under debt, they really didn't have any resources, any economy or anything like that. So I read that they were going summer by summer. They, they'll go to Cuba to work in the fields, help them with their sugar cane and cotton harvesting. Then also read, I want to say around 1930s, they started to get behind on their debt, and the banks pretty much enlisted American Marines to go over there and get their money back, strong armed them, right? So the U.S. had a occupancy in like the early 1930s, and what they were doing was they were like legit just forcing people to work. So when they got there, there wasn't many roads. 1930s, we had vehicles in the Marines. They needed to get around the country easier. So somehow they got the government to agree to allow the U.S. Marines at the time to force the Haitian people, like, go into their house and drag them out to build roads. Hundreds of miles of roads. I can say thousands, maybe thousands, but hundreds of miles of roads, so that the military can move around. And you may think like, oh, that can help the country. Yeah, it would help the country if they had an industry that needed the roads, and then they put money into it and paid the people to build the roads, and then in turn invested in their own country, and then that money that they invested goes back into the economy, and then that economy just starts to round off the money. It just starts a cycle of money, give and take, give and take. No, that wasn't it. They were pulling people out of their homes and making them build roads. So I didn't know that, And then FDR killed that with a Good Neighbor Act that he enacted in like the late 30s, right? And so after that, they just had unfortunate event after unfortunate event, hurricanes and earthquakes, and they're having pretty devastating earthquakes. If you ever lived in an area that has a lot of earthquakes, especially on islands like that, and what it seems like is Haiti is over an area where geographically there's probably underwater volcanoes, and the island is still growing, which means it's going to be trembles, it's going to be eruptions under the water, which means it's going to be earthquakes. They get like a 7 something like once a year. That's just leveling stuff. They don't have the infrastructure to withstand it. They don't have, the homes are not built like some of the buildings built in San Francisco to withstand the earthquake. So people die. They don't have the hospitals. They don't have the medicine to help these people, and then in order the jobs, right? So what they started to do when the World Cup or the Olympics was in Brazil, Brazil need to make all these soccer stadiums. World Cup, Brazil need to make all these soccer stadiums in the middle of the jungle. So the Haitians will go down there. It's cheap labor, but it's employment. Once they stopped building, they had to find another place to go, right? So what they started doing, they just start working their way up. And here's the thing. And now let's get to the border thing and my mindset about it. I looked this up. Let me find my notes. I looked this up. I feel like a newscaster. You feel me? You feel me? Let's see. Where is it? Where did I write it down? I think it's on this. I think it's on this. All right. As of July, the unemployment rate is 5.2%. That's 8.4 million people in this country are unemployed that are able to work, right? And this is per the U.S. Department of Labor. And also, as of July, there are 10.9, almost 11 million jobs available. So we have a surplus of jobs, and yet we have 8.4 million people unemployed. And that could be a culmination of things. It can be those jobs are in places where the people who are unemployed don't live, and they can't afford to get to those jobs. Right? Or it's a group of people that we all know and we all love to point out and overuse, the people who just choose not to work because they want to live off the government. Right? I think that's very few and far between, but there are those people. So for me, it's like we got all these jobs. That's why all these people are trying to come here. And these are the type of people that would do the jobs that no American-born person would want to do. You know what I mean? Like, they'll take those jobs, and within 2 generations, they have doctors and lawyers in their family. You know what I mean? Hardworking people. And I'm not saying you should just let them in to fulfill those jobs, but that is my thinking or reason why they're coming here. Right? Same thing with the Colombians, the Venezuelans, and the Mexican migrants that are all coming. They're going to come to do the jobs we don't want to do, but they're going to come here to work. They don't come here to freeload. Yeah, there's a few people and outliers that come here to do something malicious or whatever. There's people who are born here. There's people whose family's been here since the beginning of the country that do the same thing. There's no difference. And them coming to the border in masses, what irritates me is we as Americans, our first thing is we look at the interaction in one or two ways. They need to go back where they come from. They shouldn't be here. This is why we need a wall. Oh, we need Trump back. Blah, 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 blah. There's one side. The other side is, those people need to be fired. The Border Patrol and this and that. They're evil. Look at them. They're treating us like they treated us back in 1800s, 1700s, which is not incorrect. The visuals that they chose to put out on the media and the masses were some terrible optics, right? I'm not going to excuse that behavior. I will never excuse that behavior. What I am going to speak to is probably their direction that they took a little bit to the max, right? The direction of they can't cross the border, right? That you know what I mean? Like their mission, if you will, call it, was to keep these people on that side of the border because we don't have the process yet to welcome in all these people and do it properly so that they may fill in and flow into the country. And like that has to be a real difficult situation to be in, where all these people, children, women, they're just trying to find their way in life, and you got to stand your ground and keep them on the other side of that river. Because if you lose track of these people, you don't know what's happening. For the security of the country, if you will, if you're thinking about it in that way, the security of the country, you don't know what said person is bringing into the country. They haven't been searched. They haven't been looked up in international databases. We don't know their affiliation. We don't know what's going on. We don't know if they have any diseases that we, or sicknesses that we are not prepared to deal with, or if they are, can we get them vaccinations or whatever, and that comes off of just a pure security standpoint. And I give them a little leeway because I can understand how you can get overwhelmed. I have not been in a situation like that in the real world, in real life, but in training situations, I have been overwhelmed where you kind of act out of a reactionary or a survival, kind of thing, and then sometimes it's like what they call it. It's like sometimes your position goes to your head, and that same, so those things mix, in your position of authority, and your survival like mode kicks in, and your adrenaline kicks in, then you act in that way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that man went into work. He's like, I'm gonna get on this horse and act like an overseer in Mississippi. I bet you he was talking, he was hollering, he was doing all that, and it just escalated where it's like, the bow was about to break, and his job, he probably thought his livelihood and his job depend on keeping these people on the other side of the river. And I'm talking about the man on the horseback that's shown, like, I don't know if he's whipping them with the reins of his reins, or what he was doing, but it didn't look good. I didn't look too deep into the picture and analyze it. And it's just a little. It's hard to say. I've never been in that position. You've never been in that position, so it's hard to say. And if you've never been down to the border, which I've been multiple times for work, it's a whole different world down there. Whole different world. Like, most of you guys haven't been overseas, but it feels as though it's a military zone. That's what it feels like. It feels some of you guys have been to either Kuwait, but the way they structure their security checkpoints is kind of how a very large base will construct it, but it's just spread out a little bit more. Where there's multiple check zones, there's dogs, and imagine TSA spread out over miles, right? Yeah, that's the best way I can put it. Imagine TSA just spread out over miles, and then you have people migrants that pretty much run the line. You know what I mean? When I run the line, they don't get checked in. They just try to run on whatever, and you don't know what they're doing. There's so much drug activity down there. I don't want to say so much. There is drug activity, but more than drug activity is just people trying to run from bad situations in life and trying to get into America. But I would assume, as a border patrol, you don't know until you get there. You don't know until you see what's happening. So they have to treat everything at a certain level, right? I would assume right in the middle, but they have to treat everything at a certain level until they figure out what's going on, right? Because they don't want to be too casual and not be prepared for whatever's going on, right? If it's on the worst side of it. And then you don't want to be too cavalier when it's just like some mother with two kids just trying to get help, right? You'll see these people, they'll wave cops down to get help. They're just trying to get to their family that's already here, or they're lost, or they're in trouble, or they're sick, hurt, or whatever. So it's easy for people who've never seen what's going on down this way to talk from a point of, I don't want to say disgust, but talk with a little bit of separation, and for me, I just kind of take everything with a grain of salt and then make my own observations. And overall, I think our migrant processes is covered in red tape and bureaucracy that is hard. Even if you come into this country correctly, and like they say to come in correctly, there's people who don't get their citizenship for 10 years and got to keep reapplying for work visas after work visas or whatever. And there's people who pretty much the entire life lived in America and worried about being deported, can't get a driver's license, or can't go to certain schools, or can't do this because they're not considered a citizen and they don't have a status in this country. But they pay bills, they pay taxes. And like, if we kicked out every immigrant, when I mean immigrant, I mean the people that us as being immigrants or descendants of slavery, people who are not indigenous to this country, there'd be a couple million people left in this country. But when I mean if we all the people undocumented, if we sent them back to work, well, our economy will take a hit, a large hit too. A large hit. All the fruits we be out here eating, and strawberries. When's the last time you seen a Jim Bob or a Jamal out there picking strawberries? I'm not saying it ain't happening. I'm just saying you see a lot more Hispanic people, migrant workers out there sweating, getting it done, right? So Americans like us, or who may do other things or whatever, can have our strawberries out of season, So all I'm saying is this: there's empathy to be given on both sides, right? I'm not saying there's good people on both sides. I am saying no one woke up with malicious. I hope no one woke up with malicious intent, right? And I hope we, as people who are generational Americans, can see that in order for stuff like this to stop happening, we have to go to the source of the problem. Like we're arguing about the effect of it, but what caused this in the first place? Like, what kind of deals can we make with Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Colombia, Costa Rica, that will help them keep their people in said countries? You know what I mean? Like, what deals can we broker there that can help them stay there and give them a little bit of economy where they don't feel like they need to flood and come here? Or if they do come here, it's an easy transition to come here because we have a deal with said people. As long as they go through their channels in their country, they can come over here, depending on time frame or what they're trying to do, or for life. But we can make this thing easier. But our government's become so convoluted with people who have positions that are equal to and can be balanced out or cancel or veto or pause each other's. Like, there'll be like 3-4 people at the same level. One person say yes, other person say no, it doesn't go anywhere. 3 people say yes, one person say no, it doesn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much bureaucracy and red tape in our government that we don't get anything done. We get nowhere. Just like the George Floyd Act, the police reform act. First of all, when it comes to police reform, I'm for taking some of the money and putting in proactive programs. after school programs, music programs, sports, um, um, childcare, um, all these different programs to keep the kids off the street or after school in a place where they can be safe until their parents can get them, right? A lot of times, there's times where single mothers or fathers get penalized because they have to work late and they can't go get their kid. So what they do is they just tell them, you can go home. And they go home. Like me, when I was younger, I get home from school, I ain't supposed to be outside. I was a latchkey kid. I'm not supposed to be outside. You think I was listening? Nah, I was outside. Luckily, I lived in a neighborhood that nothing was going on because I'd have been in the mix. But I was outside all the time. And I think that in some of these areas, like my hometown, like Oakland, you're outside long enough, you're going to get caught up in something because there's just nothing else to do a lot of time. Right? You're like, oh, well, go do this. Like, if you're a suburbanite and you've never lived in the inner city or in a poor area, you don't understand, like, there's most of the time nothing to do. All right, unless it's football season, right? But everybody don't make the team. What about the ones that didn't make the team? All right. And if you're not good enough to be an athlete, or you really, really care about your studies, you're just an average kid, what is that for you to do? You know what I mean? Like, there's no, like, real after-school programs that are interesting. There's usually, like, the kids whose parents pay a little bit extra for their kids to stay there for a couple more hours until somebody comes and picks them up. But that's not, like, in Oakland, you have a couple of private nonprofit organizations like the OYDC, which I worked at, that has programs for these kids to go to, but it ain't free. Like, you gotta go politic for that money. And excuse me. And if you don't go get that money from these private, vendors, donators, or companies, it ain't gonna happen, right? But these police departments got millions of dollars. You know what I'm saying? Some of these places like LA County got tanks. I bet you that tank can fund quite a bit of after-school programs. Like, or also I believe some of that budget should go to mental health professionals that are a part of the police force, right? And say they set up satellite offices in these areas, right, where there's four or five, these mental health professionals in his office, and then in that office, people can come and also get counseling, right? And if something happens with that person that comes in to get counseling, they're on this, anonymous kind of database, or whatever, or just like they call for a supervisor, they call for a mental health professional. That needs to be the first thing. Everything else needs to be shut down. You're there keeping people safe, and you're calling in a mental health professional. Honestly, I think a mental health professional that's trained in protecting themselves, right? Not necessarily go search and seizure and all these other things, but just have the simple form. It's just like a translator in the military. A translator just has enough training to protect themselves, and they know how to move with the group they're in, right? And they play their part. And you have a professional, like a mental health professional, come in and help talk. Like, honestly, if it paid good enough, that may be a dope job for me, to be on a law enforcement team, but my job is to help talk down and calm these people, and I can still go through all the training. You know how many vets would take that job? You know how many vets would take that job? Like, we go to school, you know what I'm saying? We get our school paid for. We go, because that's the big thing with vets. We want that school paid for. We go to school, get that school paid for. Throw some chains to live. We go through our, psych classes. We become therapists, licensed therapists. and then y'all send us over to the you know what I'm saying, get the training in. You know what I'm saying? Send us to Quantico or something like that. Shoo. Send me in there. I'll be out fatigued up. Hey man, let me talk to you. You okay? What seems to be the problem? Alright, I'm holding them back because I don't want them in there because they out here tripping. She don't want the mustache bald one. He ain't the one. I'll keep him back. You know what I'm saying? But what's going on? How can I help you? Alright, cool. Chill. You just stay right here. Can I go talk to that person? Alright, bet. Hey man, ma'am, sir, what's the issue? Okay. Alright. So what he's telling me is he's upset because of this. Alright? See, that's how you talk to people. You know, this general once told me when we were going overseas, you win a war by hearts and minds. Hearts and minds. That's how you win a war. A complete war, you know, you gotta change hearts and minds, baby. It ain't about kicking in doors and waving the 4-4, you know what I'm saying? It's you know, there's so much more to this and so much more to dealing with people, especially people who are emotional. You know, we are descendants of people who have been bruised and battered by this government that we're supposed to just trust all the time. And the police system is it's a mirror image of the runaway slave patrols and things like that, you know, overseers and such. So, and because school doesn't teach you guys that, and I mean by you guys, I mean white people, the schools don't really teach you guys that, and they also in turn don't teach us that in school. So what we learn it from our people, you know. Thank God I'm from Oakland, where you cannot know about the Black Panthers or any, like, I don't know. There's two things I could tell you from Oakland. I've never met somebody that didn't play baseball in Oakland, the old school O, right? That's from Oakland, lived in Oakland. I don't know a single person that never played baseball. If it was only T-ball or whatever, drug dealers, lawyers, athletes, it doesn't matter. Everybody played baseball. Two, everybody knows Black history. They may not know all of Black history, but we're taught Black history in that city. And it was like a sin to not know who Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, Angela Davis, excuse me, you know, and all of the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton. It was a sin to not know these people, right? Even if you didn't know the full story and everything they went through, but you knew of these people and you knew that they fought for our rights and they knew that the white cops did not want us around. They didn't want to fool with us and anything like that. But so, you know, there's nuances. Like, we're not just all dancing and playing ball. It's like a lot of us go through things, PTSD from things and traumatic experiences and trauma. I saw something that trauma is actually hereditary. The feeling of trauma is hereditary. Or the reactions and such are hereditary. So, you know, like, mind how you treat people. You feel me? Like, especially you cops. Like, we want y'all to go home too, because we don't want y'all in our face, and we want to go home. But there is a communication breakdown. We don't speak the same language. Y'all don't understand us. So when y'all see us, y'all think we're being a threat, but we ain't. What else I'm gonna say before I get off here? Oh, I'm gonna finish talking about. So the George Floyd Act is falling apart, and y'all voted for Joe Biden, and he said he was gonna do all this stuff. We got a whole woman of color as a vice president. Ain't nothing happening, and I'm gonna get more into that in the next episode. But Cory Booker is supposed to get this done, and it's just falling on his face. A lot of the promises that are going forth from Sleepy Joe ain't really coming to fruition. I'm not seeing the effect, and I called this. He's a manager. He's not a leader. He's a placeholder, because he thought, you know, he reset. He's a reset. He made everything level. Like, that's his thing. He wasn't going to go push anything forward. He just made it level. He allowed people to talk that didn't get to talk, right, before, to even out. because people who shouldn't have been talking were talking before. So we'll talk about Joe Biden later. Maybe I'll just do an audio only podcast, but we'll talk about him later for sure. Him and Kamala, because something about her just don't sit right in my spirit. You know, she a little different to me. She seemed a little. I haven't met her, but she seems like she's just a little bit. What's the word? Not really genuine, disingenuine. Like when she was eating that sandwich, who eat like that? When she called Judge, we did it. Like, I swear, if she become president, it's bad. It's bad if she become president. She ain't, because she ain't really doing nothing that's worthy of being a president. You should have got Elizabeth Warren up in there, right? Them Democrats was kind of boo-boo that last run. I knew Joe was going to win because everybody loved Obama, and he was up there lying. But that's how the last dude got in, Agent Orange. I wonder what the Republicans going to put up this year. I wonder who they're going to put up. Probably Trump again, because he pretty much owns the Republican Party. And the Republicans are suckers for letting him do that. Ted Cruz. But anyway, yeah, man, I'm gonna get up out of here. I'm gonna get up off your sound waves and off your YouTube. I'm sorry for looking away. I got to do all the mixing and all that stuff myself. And yeah, bro, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys for commenting, subscribe. Make sure you subscribe, comment, show love, share, follow me. Codename _ ChayChay on IG. It's public now. Twitter too. I don't really check my Twitter. I go on there for news. But I changed the name because I didn't like the last name. But if you're on there, holla at me. You know. But yeah, share this, with friends or whatever. And if you like my content, once again, show love. If you want me to talk about some topics, holla at the kid. I'm open on topics. I talk about everything. You want to talk about the fourth wall in Marvel? I can kind of talk about that. You want to talk about Star Wars? We can talk about Star Wars. Just holla at me. I love y'all. Peace.